Chapter 1109. What should he do about Ruiwen? Luo Nan flipped through Ruiwen's transcripts, the teacher evaluations, and a series of materials that included psychological research and judgment. The teaching work of Acumen College was quite excellent. The relevant materials and evaluations were quite solid and reliable. And the more reliable they were, the clearer the problems highlighted above became. Taciturn, unsociable, erratic, often absent-minded, excessively cold and heartless. In the eyes of these teachers, Ruiwen was undoubtedly a problematic young girl. She was a poor student who would find it hard to complete her studies normally. The only good thing about her was that she wouldn't cause trouble for others. But this way the problems on the psychological level would become more and more serious. Oh, the problems definitely exist. But they might not be to the extent described above. Luo Nan thought for a bit and then he gave his aunt some peace of mind. Ruiwen is still a bit alienated from the school environment. The teachers are only looking at her appearance. They don't know Ruiwen's actual situation. But we have a plan in our hearts. Mrs. Luo Shuqing shot him a glance. You have a plan? Of course. You see, Ruiwen is a very special person. Even if you include all of her experiences in the underground fighting arena, it would still only be a trifling 3 years of time. A normally developing child at the age of 3 wouldn't even be able to speak clearly. Ruiwen's current reserved and silent appearance is already quite amazing. Of course, this should have a lot to do with her missing memories. Luo Nan had seriously considered Ruiwen's situation before. He was relatively optimistic. Her current problems are largely due to her previous amnesia. Her effective memories exist for far too little time. It's so little that she doesn't even have enough time to form a complete personality. But how old is she right now? 12 or 13? Maybe even 8 or 9. There's still a lot of time in the future. As long as we give her a complete, warm family, if 1 year isn't enough, then 5 years. If 5 years isn't enough, then 10 years. Sooner or later, everything will be enriched. Mrs. Luo Shuqing stared at him. You're quite confident. Luo Nan spread his hands. In the end, Ruiwen was different from other people. Even if she scored a 0 in every subject, she would certainly become an influential figure in this world in the foreseeable future. That's right. Just based on Ruiwen's talent and strength, Luo Nan had already marked out her lower limit. As for her upper limit, Ruiwen was still unable to see it clearly. In short, she was absolutely not bad. The problem now was how to explain it to his aunt. She didn't understand Luo Nan and Ruiwen's positions in the circle. Of course, if she really did understand, she would only be more worried. Luo Nan could only play dumb. He absolutely couldn't continue the conversation. Don't worry. I'll take care of Ruiwen's matter today. I looked at the process just now. At most, I just need to make a trip to the orphanage, the civil affairs department, and the school. Speaking of which, Wei Wu and that little Ji who just came over from the orphanage are quite close to Ruiwen. You saw it all yesterday. I feel that Ruiwen looks at the two of them like she looks at the crow that often circles outside our window. Luo Nan was actually speechless. Luo Nan left the house early, bearing the pressure from his aunt. Okay, it was impossible for him to just run over to the administrative window to do the procedures. After all, he was a boss now. Okay, he was completely unfamiliar with the relevant procedures. Plus, he was still a minor. He wouldn't be able to do anything even if he went. Actually, he was just a second in command. Before he left the house, he had already passed the requirements for completing the procedures to Bamboo Pole. Yuan used to do this sort of thing, but she was currently in a state of closed-door training. It wasn't good to disturb her, so Bamboo Pole, the newly recruited high-ranking employee, could temporarily perform the duties of a secretary. Luo Nan didn't really want to be a hands-off shopkeeper. He just didn't want to mess around blindly. Right now, he and Bamboo Pole did a more detailed division of labor. I just asked. This procedure requires the personal signature and authentication of the person in charge of the orphanage who originally handled the adoption procedures. Boss, you're fast. Go get a copy from Dean Wan. I'm not that fast. In short, I'll be fast. I'll prepare some other things on my side. How about we meet up later? Okay, I'll get in touch later. Luo Nan arranged a time and place with Bamboo Pole, and then he strolled leisurely toward the Orchid Town's orphanage in the faraway Forest Wall district. Don't look at the one-way tour guide rumbling in the inner world right now. Luo Nan knew that he wasn't a genius like Ruiwen. A large amount of energy would inevitably be consumed in order to realize mid to long distance teleportation. It would also cause a large commotion. It wasn't that he couldn't do it, it was just that it wasn't necessary in his daily life. Especially in the domain of Xia City, where President Ouyang's psychic wave network covered the entire city. In a certain sense, this was the extension of his extraordinary domain. President Ouyang probably wouldn't mind if Luonan were to teleport here, but the pressure on the psychic wave network would be too great. Not to mention that he would be alarmed 3 times a day. He was afraid that the personnel on duty would become numb to it. This made every second different from the last. Perhaps everyone was like this in essence, but people like Luonan, who possessed a distinct trend of optimization, were few and far in between. With this speed, I should be able to reach the orphanage in approximately 40 minutes. But after I reach the Western District, I'll switch to the 100-knot bug. It will actually be faster. Luonan calmly evaluated and chose his route. Right now, he was gliding from the middle section of an office building to an unmanned platform a few dozen meters away. And at this time, Bamboo Pole made a call. Let me add another piece of information. There are some procedures that require Ruewen to personally verify. Fortunately, she doesn't need to personally be present. But some real-time communication is still necessary. She's with Moya. I'm going to see if their recording is finished. Luonan landed safely. He took the opportunity to do a roll to eliminate the force of impact and reduce his speed to a normal level. He entered the building from the platform. He sat on the railing of the fire escape stairs and slid down like a slide. During this time, he made a call to Moya. What's the situation on your side? She casually hasn't returned home for 10 days to half a month. What's the situation with her making a punitive expedition? It's not like I skipped home to participate in a music festival. What's the big deal with asking? After the brother and sister stabbed each other in the back, they both understood that the focal point of the issue was Ruewen. So Moya sent Luonan a video. What the hell are you doing? The content of the video was a short few seconds. It was actually Clara, the little temptress with the constitution to attract disasters. She pulled Ruewen along to face a mirror and teach her the wave action. That's right. It was the action that especially manifested flexibility, coordination, and of course, the beauty of a woman's body. Luonan swore that he had only watched it no more than 5 times. He only turned his head to reply after he distinguished that Clara's electric eyes were fundamentally different from Ruewen's ice-cold gaze. Didn't you guys go to record? Did you guys record in the dance studio? Pretty right? For the sake of correcting Ruewen's gaze, we've been recording from the wee hours of the morning until now. Indeed. Luonan should be proud. Had he spontaneously grasped the crux of the problem? Actually, he came to a realization after Moya's reminder. With Ruewen's wooden and taciturn nature, her gaze actually wouldn't be that aggressive. There was even a hidden attraction to the opposite sex hidden behind the aggressive gaze. Even if it was displayed in coordination with the wave action. This was clearly the gaze that had been packaged and adjusted. As a conservative parent, this was the time to yell, he's young so he shouldn't learn well. But Luonan wasn't that kind of person. In fact, he turned his hand and sent this video to his group of friends. Then he asked Moya, anything else? The howling of wolves in the group of friends was transmitted over at nearly the same time as Moya's next video. The video still showed Ruewen learning to dance. Only this time the entire BHD crew was on the stage. The 4 of them formed a group and stepped to the beat of the soundtrack. They danced explosively. Although it was explosively, it didn't reveal any legs or breasts. At most it revealed a snow-white waist. But they were able to achieve coordination and synchronization. It was crisp and efficient. It was truly pleasing to the eye. How's it? Amazing. Luonan really admired her. Ruewen lightly stepped to the beat and played the guitar. This was already the pinnacle of her external performance that Luonan could imagine. Luonan didn't even dare to think of this before he saw it with his own eyes. It's like that, right? Something like that. Does it feel out of place? No. It's pretty good. Luonan wasn't just being polite. Ruewen's dance was secondary. Her body's flexibility and coordination was something that the 3 girls of BHD were professional idols. Even if they were multiplied by 10, they still wouldn't be able to compare. There really wasn't any difficulty in coordinating this sort of simple singing and dancing. What made Luonan, who was familiar with Ruewen's temperament, feel particularly amazed was her expressive ability. Even though Ruewen's face was ice cold and not a single fluctuation could be seen, the expression in her eyes as she danced was the same as when she was practicing her dance in front of the mirror. Her eyes revealed a sharp offensive nature. It was very easy to associate her fiery and explosive dance with an allure of danger. Is she putting on a show? Luonan didn't just send these words to Moya. He also sent them to his group of friends. Only after sending them did Luonan feel that this question was a bit out of the blue. But there were quite a few smart people in this world, and there were many by Luonan's side. Bamboo Pole, who had just been blasted out of the group, replied in an instant. He even took a screenshot of a moment where Ruewen's chin was slightly raised. She looked down from high above with a gaze that seemed to be examining and disdainful. She's super expressive. An expert must have helped her adjust this gaze. Who taught her? Through Bamboo Pole's explanation, Luonan confirmed a step further that his conjecture wasn't wrong. In essence, Ruewen was indeed a highly dangerous and aloof existence. But this danger and loftiness were hidden. They absolutely wouldn't be exposed so easily. So that gaze was a performance that had undergone an effective adjustment. Acting was a relatively high-level method of expression. If his aunt saw this scene, she should be quite relieved. Yep, Emoya might even be beaten to death. After a while, Emoya also replied, "See, Ruewen definitely has talent." Luonan sighed from the bottom of his heart. "I really didn't expect." "Hold on. I nearly let you get away with it. You said you stayed up all night for the recording, but in the end you guys did this?" It really is a BHD recording. But Ruewen doesn't have a deep understanding of this sort of dynamic music. Wouldn't it be great to let them interact a bit? Like hell I'd believe you. Though he said this, Luonan admitted that this was indeed a very good start. Mrs. Luo Shuqing and Emoya, this mother and daughter pair, really did have a level in the area of educating and inspiring children. Even though they didn't really get along with each other. "I'll send this to my aunt. Let her have some fun." "Don't. I'm sending it." "Luonan, you're dead for sure." Hee hee. Luonan turned his head to look at the second video after teasing her for a bit. Yep, it was pure admiration. But when he saw the tallest and most fit figure within the group of four, his thoughts were evoked. He recalled the matter he had heard this morning. "Hey, since you guys are together, do you know if the tweet about Shui Yuan has been deleted?" "Oh that. It's already been taken care of." "This matter is very complicated. Don't get involved." "Since you said it's complicated, it seems like it really is." "Of course. Speaking of which, in my impression, Shui Yuan should be the most worry-free. Why did you suddenly think of posting that?" "It's none of our business, but it's none of our business." Luonan was just about to ask a step further when someone tagged him in his friend group on the Hexier. "Pay attention. Is there someone secretly taking a picture of that shadow in the mirror?" Don't doubt that I'm talking about Hu City. They did some bad things in the past and now they're rebounding quite fiercely. From what I remember, it seems like that branch president is quite close to headquarters. As for what his name was, Luonan really couldn't think of it for the time being. Gao Wenfu. Red Fox suddenly popped up. It was a simple reply, but it sounded like he was chewing on ice shards. "Is he your enemy?" Papercut followed closely and asked in passing. "I don't have the qualifications to become enemies with him. Otherwise I wouldn't have made it to Xia City alive." Red Fox spoke calmly. "However, this person is undoubtedly the leader of Hu City. He has thousands upon thousands of disciples, disciples and disciples. His influence radiates far and wide. He might have clashed with him that time." "I understand." Luonan thought for a moment. He didn't have a deep impression of this person. Red Fox must have participated in the summit that day, but he didn't sit in the core circle. Octopus suddenly had a strange thought. They all have the surname Gao. Celestial Master Gao and Brother Gauda, are you related to them? "They're out of my league." Gauda's answer was very simple. Dean 1 had already sent off the guests at this time. He came up to help Luonan complete the signing and authentication procedures. Though it was complicated, it didn't take much time. Luonan took the opportunity to ask about the origins of the guests. Sure enough, they came from the vagrant camp in the Trigate district. They even specially hired a very famous social activist. She was the woman who had asked the question. "It looks like this demonstration won't stop anytime soon. They can't be going door to door to check the vagrants who have entered the adoption process, right?" Dean 1 shook his head. "Right now, they hope to establish contact with the vagrants on this channel through various welfare homes. It can only be said to be a request. Their attitude is okay. It's also possible that the minor vagrant children aren't the main focus of this activity." "Is it because the majority of the missing are adults?" Dean 1 nodded silently. Luonan let out a breath and didn't say anything more. Though the current vagrant demonstration and other events were equivalent to adding chaos to Luonan's global census from a certain perspective, Luonan didn't care about this. He wasn't the instigator of the chaos. People who were worried about the chaos often doubted their ability to uncover the truth. Luonan was very confident in himself. Thank you, Dean Wan. I'm going to continue with the procedures. Wait a moment. Dean Wan stopped Luonan. He took out a ball-shaped object from his pocket and handed it over. This little toy was a bit like the incense basket used in ancient times for incense. It was perfectly round and its surface was a hollow structure. Chief Hu, I'll have to trouble you from now on. No trouble at all. I'm ashamed to say this, but our service really isn't up to standard. Deputy Chief Hu's attitude was even more humble than the last time they met. He led the two inside. Luonan didn't actually need to personally handle the specific procedures. Luonan had already given the SCA and the government system of Xia City a gargantuan amount of face by sending over Dean Wan's personal verification. Under Bamboo Pole's mediation, what Luonan needed to do right now was basically to negotiate and question. Of course, neither Luonan nor Bamboo Pole paid much attention to it. They changed the subject on the way. I made a little discovery just now. It's related to our cute, beautiful housekeeper, Miss Shui Yuan. Didn't you mention something about the game network? I just went up to do a bit of research. She's up there? So she's a vagrant. Luonan immediately had a guess. Emoya had said something in the morning about being confused when one is involved. Bamboo Pole nodded. She's not just a vagrant. She's quite a senior in the game network. What I'm trying to say is that she was already registered on this website before it became famous. She probably just left the circle. Is she a member of the exchange? That's not it. I also did a bit of research. Miss Shui Yuan is a relatively rare city migrant. She followed her adoptive parents from Hu City to Xia City when she was 8 years old. It's been 10 years since then. She had been adopted into this adoptive family for no more than 3 months before that. It was also not long after Hu City released the Vagrant Relocation Act. She was one of the first vagrant descendants to be adopted. Due to the fact that the procedures weren't complete back then and the fact that she was moving across the city, her vagrant identity was never revealed until now. It sounds quite complicated. It's just that it was complicated back then. Bamboo Pole spread his hands. Actually, the reason I'm telling you this is because if I can dig up her background, then others can too. Actually, I just casually looked up some information when I was drinking coffee in Chief Hu's room. I didn't even use any technical methods. See, Shui Yuan's vagrant identity isn't exposed. Once exposed, the trouble will definitely escalate. Bamboo Pole's judgment was still ringing in Luonan's ears when something happened over at BHD. And the funny thing was that Luonan didn't find out about this from Emoya or Ruewen. Instead, he found out about this from a hot topic on social media. A short video spread across many popular social media platforms in Xia City. It quickly became popular and eventually activated Bamboo Pole's network sniffing and capturing mechanism, allowing the video to enter his database. Soon, the two people in charge of the Xia City branch of the SCA were left dumbstruck by the sudden explosion of the video. The place where the video was taken should be the office building where Ming Tang Culture was located, and the person filming it was most likely a paparazzi reporter. The reason they said so was because they had no idea where they got the news from. They blocked the elevator entrance and accurately captured the BHD team. From the video, it could be seen that the paparazzi were clearly heading for Shui Yuan. Their mouths were full of words like vagrant, protest, mutant infection, quarantine policy, and other words that had nothing to do with the entertainment industry. The questions they asked weren't up to par. They just picked out the most exciting things to say. Look at the trio from BHD, especially Shui Yuan's reaction. What kind of reaction could she have? The trio from BHD, who had just made some progress from being an amateur, had never seen such a spectacle before. Their beautiful faces turned pale for a time. They retreated and were completely blocked inside the elevator. But in the next moment, the people at the very front of the crowded elevator entrance all lost their balance for some unknown reason. Some fell forward, some fell backward, and a large number of people fell. And on top of the bodies that fell all over the floor was Ruewen. It was without a doubt Ruewen. It was unknown when she arrived at the front. She was the first one to break through the crowd from the elevator. She crossed the chaotic area on the ground and led the trio from BHD as well as Emoya and the others, to quickly break through the encirclement. No, it wasn't accurate to say that they broke through the encirclement. They simply swaggered off. What's going on? Luonan was a bit stupefied. No wonder the internet was exploding. When celebrities from all walks of life were interviewed, all sorts of dark histories emerged one after another. But most of the time there were filters, inappropriate statements, covert insults and so on. It was truly unheard of for someone to overturn more than 10 people at once and swagger off like that. If it was a bodyguard, then it would have been fine to rely on brute force to commit murder. But the one who made a move in that instant was a little girl who looked to be a few years younger than the trio from BHD. What's going on? Luo Nan found Emoya's number and called her. He actually couldn't get through twice in a row. When he finally got through with great difficulty, he was showered with these words. It's the ones you've seen on the internet. They're cool, right? Emoya was clearly still in a state of excitement. If these words get passed to the reporters, you'll be an instigator. It's not that serious. We were just defending ourselves. Luo Nan learned more information from Emoya's mouth. The reporters that had surged over were fine. They looked like a surging crowd with an extraordinary aura. But in reality there were only 2 or 3 reporters with interview permits, and they were all from unrated tabloids. If this was the case, then the agent who had been following them from the side was completely capable of controlling the situation. But Luo Nan never expected that these paparazzi reporters had actually been summoned by some anti-fans. That's right. A good portion of the people who had tried to rush into the elevator were of this status. Especially when there was an extremist mixed in. An unknown liquid mixed with paint was found on his body. There were also blades and the like. This solved one of Luo Nan's doubts. No wonder Ruewen took the initiative to make a move. It was said that this person was originally a fanatical fan of Shui Yuan, but at the same time he was also an extreme anti-vagrant member. Shui Yuan's registration on Youyin clearly pricked his paranoid and fragile nerves. He gathered with other anti-fans and summoned paparazzi to set up this trap. It couldn't be said that he was completely brainless, but this method of doing things was really hard to evaluate. Luo Nan didn't feel like wasting even a second on this kind of person. He was more concerned about the aftermath of this matter. There were far too many people involved in this matter. Ruewen, Emoya, and the trio from BHD all appeared on camera in this matter. And from the perspective of the people in the entertainment circle, this sort of sharp rise in negative popularity was absolutely not a good thing. Luo Nan and Bamboo Pole glanced at each other. Bamboo Pole had just walked through Luo Nan's online information database. Bamboo Pole turned to reveal a serious expression. A dam of 1,000 miles can collapse because of an ant's nest. Without a good beginning, the entire matter is destined to be utterly terrible. Look, this is the trouble caused by you people letting the high-level privileges go unused. Luo Nan shook his head and directly got up. You guys talk. I'm going to take a few calls. This short video began to ferment in Luo Nan's circle of friends and relatives in the time it took to make a few phone calls. Many people, including Luo Nan's aunt and uncle, called to inquire about the situation. There were even more calls from Emoya. There was no need for a professional like Bamboo Pole to make a move in the group of friends. Information regarding this matter came from various social media and various other online platforms. All of them were gathered in an endless stream. The focus of the matter had clearly shifted. The attention of the masses of netizens didn't have the patience to investigate the complicated background. Who was Shui Yuan from the BHD group? Why did they dare to do such a thing? Why did they do such a thing? It would be hard to get any results without waiting for a few days. The true focus came directly from the video. Who was that young woman who overthrew the reporter and swaggered off? And then a certain busybody took a screenshot from the chaotic video. The popularity of this matter began to rise sharply. The main character of the screenshot was Ruewen. The focus was on her actions, but the core was her eyes. That cold and even empty gaze of hers when she overthrew the reporter in an instant. Even someone like Luo Nan, who knew her inside out, felt his heart tremble when he saw it. Of course, the essence of everything was still her appearance. Although Ruewen wasn't the stunning type, her skin and bones were excellent. Moreover, she possessed a body and soul structure that exceeded that of a normal person's level of life. She was truly a flawless beauty without any blind spots. She absolutely could withstand the nitpicking and comparison of those bootlickers on the internet. All of this was quickly streamed on the internet this morning with the dance practice video of Ruewen and the BHD group. It caused a further commotion. Chapter 11-12. Is this a publicity stunt? The amount of information about the demon-eyed woman on the internet had been fluctuating, but it maintained a certain level of popularity and did not stop for a few days. As a result, Zhang Yingying, who had been concentrating on the godson raising technique, couldn't help but wonder and sigh when she handed in her homework. Don't you have a limit? This isn't normal. The general public would only find it abnormal if there's a restriction, right? Zhang Yingying was quick-witted and immediately grasped the key point. You're letting this go? It's just tacitly allowing some people to add fuel to the fire. Understood. Protect that long-legged snow garden and divert the public's attention. No wonder Mingtang Culture's statement was so vague. That makes sense. Otherwise, you guys might as well just leave the SCA's high-clearance group. It's useless. Speaking of which, you guys are throwing Ruewen out to attract firepower. It's alright. The comments online about Ruewen are relatively neutral. We've also asked for her opinion. Ruewen doesn't really care about such things. Instead, she's been practicing with Shui Yuan and the others for a longer period of time. In reality, this wasn't a big deal. The storms of the secular world couldn't affect them at all. At least, a considerable number of people thought so, including Zhang Yingying. The problem was, it wasn't just the secular world. The news had also caused ripples in the inner world. It had only been a little over half a year since the big incident of Miss 2 out of 1,000. She could have become a world-class tycoon in a single leap, but in the end, she had fallen into the so-called trap of opportunity of an extraordinary. This incident was still fresh in many people's minds. Needless to say, Luo Nan was one of the main characters of this incident. He was currently setting off a tsunami of impact in the world. The combination of legend and gossip was so perfect that it was hard not to attract people's attention. You have to pay attention. I heard from the boss that the Starry Sky Club has already received several rounds of inquiries regarding Ruewen. They're using the same old trick of 2 out of 1,000. They're probing and provoking. Yes, I know. They want to bind Raven to the value of the deep blue world as a key to open the door. Well, actually, I'm a key too. Luo Nan began grading Zhang Yingying's homework. He wasn't interested in this matter. In fact, he received the news earlier than Zhang Yingying. After all, he was a member of the Starry Sky Club in name. I understand. Zhang Yingying sighed. What an annoying label. Aha, it's all over your head. Right now, there are many people, and it's not just those from the deep blue world who are trying to stick labels on Luo Nan. This isn't completely intentional. They are facing an object that they are temporarily unable to understand, and they are unwilling to pay the cost of time. Sticking labels and making definitions is the most worry-saving. The problem is that there are people taking advantage of this trend to add fuel to the fire. This is quite troublesome. What was even more troublesome was that these messy labels, if they had a unified prefix or suffix, they would eventually be locked to something like keys. It would be useless to tear them off later. For example, the key to crack the new plane. The key to breaking the source of the mutated infection. Could even be the key to unraveling the secrets of the deep blue world. The key to unlocking the limits of human evolution. Of course, it was also entirely possible that it was the key to opening Pandora's box, the key to breaking the current order of human society, and so on. In short, they were all keys. Luo Nan had been in a special position ever since the Pacific Ocean Summit. He was the crux of everything, but he was also the key to everything. At least this was the impression he gave others. Even though he intentionally slowed down the progress of the global census to buy a certain amount of buffer time, he was unable to stop the flow of people's thoughts. Speaking of which, is it really that important to distinguish the source of the mutated infection and the extraordinary power? Jim, is it that important? Zhang Yingying left a message on the private chat interface. That depends on whether or not someone is concealing something. How complicated. I thought we never needed to think about this aspect. Zhang Yingying's sorrow was not unique to her. At this stage, the spirit of the summit conference had already spread widely in the inner world circles. Even though the possibility of everyone suffering from the mutated infection was extremely small after the awakening of their extraordinary powers, people still needed to pay attention to this important development at all times. Whether it was the source of radiation or the trend line, these concepts seemed understandable, but they were complex and unfathomable. They all announced that the world they lived in was undergoing rapid changes. They needed to work hard to adapt. However, a considerable portion of people still followed the trend and advanced. If we don't do well, we'll become the enemy of the entire world. Think on the bright side. The entire world might be convinced. There are far too many inconceivable things on Earth. There's no need to talk about it in the universe. Let's talk about what's happening right now. Who would have thought that you, Sister Yingying, would walk the path of a breeder and never return? Protruding? I'm praising you. Luo Nan's attitude was very sincere. This was because the homework Zhang Yingying had handed in, or more accurately, the dumb sand breeding diary, was getting better and better. She was already quite clear about the special aggregation mode of dumb sand, which seemed to be an accumulation of sand. She even began to suspect that this aggregation mode was a reflection of some sort of external structural state. That's right. Dumb sand was highly related to the magneto-optical mica. Though the magneto-optical mica was rapidly growing in the past few days, and the disturbances it brought to dumb sand were a bit too frequent, Zhang Yingying was able to capture this abnormality under the premise that she was severely lacking in information. She was able to form an accurate judgment. This was quite amazing. And in today's homework, Zhang Yingying had even begun to consider searching for other order fulcrums for dumb sand to serve as backup. She wanted to volunteer herself. In fact, this was very much in line with the idea of the fantasy school's artificial fantasy breeds, to transfer control, the kind that went straight to the core. I have to say, Sister Yingying, you really have an extraordinary acuity in this field. Just say it's talent. Yes, it is indeed a talent. In the domain of configuration and superconfiguration, talent was also very important. According to Luonan's understanding of the situation, there were some people who were very good at mathematical logic and derivations. There were some people who were able to use super strong insight to point out the specific structure and spacetime distribution in an instant. Luonan could barely be considered as the second type. This was under the premise that he possessed a powerful mental sensing ability, and he had the endless spacetime configuration fragments within the misty labyrinth as a reference. To be honest, it was the selection and analysis of a large amount of valid data, and it was forcefully fed. Zhang Yingying, on the other hand, did not have a strong foundation and conditions like him. Under such circumstances, she was able to repeatedly grasp the key parts of the dumb sand's growth process, had her own ideas, and effectively form a positive interaction with the dumb sand while still lacking a lot of knowledge. Other than talent, there was no other explanation. Chapter 11-14. I didn't come here to ask about the progress. Luonan really wanted to say this to Ruiwen, but doing so would be too deliberate. It would make the following exchanges more difficult. He could only grin. What did you discover? Fragments that might be suitable. Ruiwen was probably the person in this world who understood Luonan's pseudoplane plan the best. She didn't care about the practicality and feasibility of this plan. She just kept her head down in the mist maze, searching for the most suitable large-scale plane or domain fragment for Luonan to transform. In fact, the information about the existence of large-scale fragments within the mist maze was provided by Ruiwen in the first place. The mist maze was a fragmented world. Even the concept of a world wasn't accurate enough. It simply didn't possess the structure to bear material substance. According to Luonan's conjectures, it was extremely likely that it was the remnant of one or even several previous worlds that had been completely crushed by a terrifying power. Only the lowest level of law fragments were left behind. These were originally untouchable. At the very least, it was impossible for Luonan to come into contact with them with his perceptual abilities back then. The reason why an environment like the mist maze was formed was most likely because it was connected to the space and time of Earth. It was infected by the space and time here. Perhaps it was also coupled with the powerful radiation of Sunwheel Hell to complete the outer shell seal. Only then was there the scene of haze and sandstorm that could appear before Luonan and others. Luonan had already caught a glimpse of these possibilities after cultivating the magnetite mica jellyfish and borrowing its special clairvoyance mode. However, he still needed to utilize his own visualization and configuration construction abilities of the large coordinate system to move within the mist maze. He needed to open a path in the mountains and build a bridge in the rivers. This kind of mode was bound to have great limitations. Or perhaps it could be said, the mist maze only displayed Luonan's appearance as an existence. When he tried to construct a fulcrum for his existence, he had already formed a permanent change in the mist maze. This was a bit similar to the predicament other ability users faced when facing the storm of the Abyss region. Only Ruiwen, with her inconceivable talent of body and soul fusion, could transform into a similar form of existence. She could travel relatively freely in the misty maze, and she could even capture the relatively complete spacetime signals within, resonating with the overlapping and distorted waves. If the compatibility was high, it was even possible to teleport to the other side. Generally speaking, fragments that were able to emit and retain a relatively complete signal in a highly complex and chaotic region were all fragments of a larger scale. Ruiwen had followed this train of thought to explore the depths of the mist labyrinth, and the results were basically in line with her guesses. Luo Nan would occasionally be able to capture this sort of signal within the tree-hole space that he had constructed himself. But he blushed with shame. The precision of his probing was far inferior to Rue Wen's natural talent. Therefore, the main force of exploration at this stage could only be Rue Wen. Frankly speaking, the process of Rue Wen's perception, resonance, matching, and even teleportation was hard for Luo Nan to understand with his current level of understanding. He only knew that there were certainly risks involved. Rue Wen would suffer minor injuries from time to time during the exploration process. It seemed that the degree of matching and resonance wasn't enough, and the forceful teleportation was the result. For this reason, Luo Nan gave orders to Rue Wen, telling her to avoid impatience. At the same time, Luo Nan treasured the results of Rue Wen's exploration very much. Every time he would thoroughly research and completely deny the feasibility of the modifications. Only then would he stop. Today's suck. Let's take a look first. Rue Wen gradually changed her method of communication due to her relatively poor ability to express herself. She no longer reported verbally. Instead, she used the notes she had prepared beforehand. It was very clear that Rue Wen had absorbed Luo Nan's note-taking methods in recent times. The presence of graphics far exceeded that of words within the contents of the notes. It was just that Rue Wen's note-taking abilities were built upon Luo Nan's solid foundation in sketching. Rue Wen's notes looked much more simple and unadorned. Alright. If Luo Nan didn't have a relatively complete understanding of the terrain of the Misty Labyrinth, it really wouldn't have been an easy matter to understand. Luo Nan scratched his head. He temporarily pushed aside the idea of how to communicate with Rue Wen. He did his best to translate the information that Rue Wen was trying to reveal from the concise graphics. You've made progress in drawing. Luo Nan first gave a word of praise. This wasn't a false statement. Rue Wen really had begun to feel a bit like drawing. At the very least, there was a set pattern. It was just that the structural model of the work area was a bit too simple. Also, why did the virtual work area lag one after another? This caused the graphics that Rue Wen drew to look a bit awkward. Hold on. This was an animation. Luo Nan captured the continuous changes in the graphics during the lag process. He was actually a bit pleasantly surprised for a time. It was rare for Rue Wen to ponder over some other ideas. Her train of thought was clearly becoming more and more lively. But then he was puzzled. It must be said that the drawing software that Rue Wen used did indeed have an intelligent animation function. He didn't want to make things awkward for Rue Wen with her own outstanding perceptual abilities. But now, through the special clairvoyance mode of the magnetic photon mica jellyfish, he shouldn't be able to sense it, right? Rue Wen shouldn't care even if she did sense it. Well, she wouldn't. Luo Nan cast his gaze over after completing the relevant mental preparations. Rue Wen was still sitting in the corner of the pitch-black room. She maintained the same posture as before, but her eyes were closed. The virtual work area was off. That's right. She didn't need to display it, so of course there was no need to keep it on. The problem was that Luo Nan had no way of knowing whether or not Rue Wen was resting with her eyes closed, or whether or not she was surfing the web through her retina projection. Luo Nan stared at her for a long time. He wasn't sure whether or not he had been discovered by Rue Wen. In any case, he hadn't discovered anything. This didn't give him any comfort. Instead, he felt his head swell. The problem was complicated. He wanted to move closer, but he was a bit afraid. He just circled around her feet. Rue Wen had to bend over to pick Jerry up and bring him over. It was quite eye-catching to see a middle and low-grade student appear here during class time. The lively muskrat that moved closer intensified this impression. However, Rue Wen's face was even more eye-catching. They could faintly hear someone exclaim in surprise over at the public activity area. Hold on. This is the Demon Eye woman, right? Short hair, black eyes, fair skin, and a beautiful appearance. She looks like... especially that skin. She's from our school? The students of Acumen College possessed the most basic qualities. They suppressed their voices when they exclaimed in surprise. But there weren't many people here to begin with. The corner of the bar was relatively quiet, so the sounds of exclamations and whispers were particularly clear. Luo Nan and Rue Wen obviously heard them loud and clear. Luo Nan looked over there and saw that Rue Wen's jade porcelain-like face didn't fluctuate at all. She was completely unaware that she had become the center of everyone's gazes. Tianqi also heard them. He knew of this fact earlier than the vast majority of the people here, even though he and Ruewen had only met a few times. He grinned and took advantage of the fact that Ruewen hadn't come over yet to come closer. He whispered, "There are quite a few people who are crazy about Ruewen in the society. It seems like some people have already guessed it. I heard that OK has already gotten someone to inquire about Ruewen's contact information." "OK? Oh, it's that vice president." Luonan's impression was that he seemed to be a rather pretentious young man. As for Ruewen's identity being leaked, it wasn't strange. After all, this little girl was a frequent customer of the Mystic Arts Research Society. Her appearance and temperament were especially outstanding. It was very normal for her to leave an impression on others. Luonan smiled at Tianqi. "Ruewen's here. Let's go do an experiment. We'll talk next time." "Sure. You busy yourself." Tianqi was already very content to be able to exchange a few words with Luonan. He saw Ruewen walk over with Jerry in her arms. He stood up and helped her pull out a nearby chair before leaving. However, Ruewen didn't have any intentions of sitting down. She just looked at Luonan. Luonan wanted to chat with her some more, but when he saw the little girl's calm and wooden expression as well as the drinks that were already packed in his hand, he sighed in the end. "Let's go." Luonan and Ruewen didn't do any experiments in Gear's underground laboratory. Instead, they quickly jumped to the cloud world and entered the misty maze. They went to do the on-the-spot investigation they had agreed on last night. Of course, the on-the-spot investigation was impossible. The area that Ruewen could currently reach was still out of Luonan's reach. Ruewen clearly had her own considerations regarding this point. Within the treehole space that Luonan had created to carry material matter, Ruewen brought up the offline mode drawing software. She referred to the previous records and cast her gaze into the area of the sandstorm outside. At the same time, some of the chaotic fragments that whistled through the air displayed a few special trajectories. They gradually took shape and formed into a scale. They were like thousands of ravines in the depths of the shattered wilderness. There was an underground river that meandered and flowed. As long as Luonan had the time in the near future, he would certainly go to the treehole space to conduct an eavesdrop. He would also make the relevant records. He would combine the boundless fragmented data with Ruewen's search records to slowly trace the outline of the misty maze. He didn't dare to say that he had a complete grasp of it, but he had a general understanding of it. The core of the maze was, of course, the Sunwheel Extreme Hell. It was a place where the two unimaginable forces of order and chaos locked together. It was both violent and balanced. Luonan didn't know how far the other side was from him. The concept of near and far wasn't suitable to be used here. All he could sense was the pull and radiation of this powerful existence. It was very likely that what he had been paying attention to all this time was just a projection. The main body was still countless light years away. But it was also possible that he would fall into the fatal gravitational sphere if he took another step into the misty labyrinth. It would be impossible for him to climb out. Luonan had consecutively created two world-class events, the light of the polar domain and the daytime nightmare, within half a year. He understood the terror of the Sunwheel Extreme Hell better than anyone else. Therefore, he could only stay a respectful distance away. He even had to intentionally distinguish and avoid the eavesdropping. The remaining areas that could be eavesdropped and traced were the main parts of the lenticular nebula. Basically, they were the perceptible areas that had been contaminated by the local spacetime rules of Earth. Luonan made a simple division of them. The first type was the radiation zone. It seemed that the two grand forces of the Sunwheel Extreme Hell had collided in opposite directions within these areas. It was unknown how many years had passed since the collision, but the shockwaves were still tenaciously continuing without stopping. Of course, it was more likely that they were affected by the powerful and contradictory radiation of the Sunwheel Extreme Hell, resulting in the continuous impact and collision. They also carried out a complex fusion. It was as if they were verifying the interlocking equilibrium of the Sunwheel Extreme Hell, but they weren't completely successful. This was the main melody of the Misty Labyrinth. The other type was the safe zone. Luonan's Luo clan's sandwich domain, which bore the space of the tree hole, was located in the relatively quiet periphery. These areas were clearly affected by the local spacetime of Earth. They were the main forces that collided and formed the cloud world. Currently, they could be considered the underlying structure of the cloud world. Strictly speaking, the distribution of this structure didn't have the concept of up, down, and four directions. The division between the inside and the outside was very blurry. Chapter 11:17. Luo Nan had sensed something during Rue Wen's demonstration just now. During the entire process, Rue Wen had only used her initial power from beginning to end. She had pushed the initial sketch, and then everything had operated according to the established procedure. There really hadn't been any other interference in the middle. Luo Nan's awkward feeling stemmed from this. He had misunderstood earlier. Rue Wen hadn't drawn the results of her own observations into images and then demonstrated them. She had merely wanted to display the scene that had just occurred for him to see. To be more precise, there had never been any results of observation. The star atlas formed from the monitoring data corresponded to the nodes of Rue Wen's sketch. The closest set of nodes had just reached the first 2020 of the star atlas. Nothing had happened yet. How could there be any observations? In other words, this was a set of foresight. It foretold the development and evolution of a portion of the radiation region of the mist labyrinth in the future. Luo Nan cast his gaze towards the lens nebula. He felt the astronomical amount of data corresponding to every instant within. He thought about the amount of computation required for the dissipation and convergence of every detail. He went silent for a time. Of course, this was just a guess. As for whether or not it was true, it was still faster to ask Rue Wen. Rue Wen, is this the result of your predictions? Rue Wen thought for a moment and answered, I see a bit. I see. Luo Nan didn't know how to respond for a time. Rue Wen rarely used rhetorical techniques when she spoke. She usually wouldn't say things like descriptions or comparisons. So, when she said she saw it, she really saw it? It would have been very hard for Luo Nan to think about this a month ago. But during this time, the inconceivable perceptual mode that came from the magnetic optical mica was gradually changing Luo Nan's observation and thought patterns. The appearance of this world was becoming more and more different from what it had always displayed over the past decade. Whether it was living things, inanimate objects, material objects, or the void, everything revealed a different structure and connection under the bizarre perspective of the magnetic optical mica. Right now Luo Nan was doing his best to adjust and adapt. He hoped that this difference wouldn't turn into a tear. Looking at the normal world was already like this. What Luo Nan saw and felt when he observed the mist labyrinth was different from before. It was just that this place was far too chaotic and complex even under the special perspective of the magnetic optical mica. And the amount of data excavated had increased by an order of magnitude. Luo Nan needed to comb it a step further before he could hope to restore it to effective information. Since he was like this, who knew what this world was like in Rue Wen's eyes? Rue Wen was most likely unable to understand the complex train of thought within Luo Nan's mind. Since Luo Nan had asked her, she obviously had to answer to the best of her abilities. Right now, Luo Nan had already brought up the lens nebula. Rue Wen gestured at the more intuitive star atlas. There's one here or maybe two. It's a bit dangerous right now. After a while, it'll be thrown out to this position. If it was someone else listening to Rue Wen's explanation, they would definitely be confused. Luo Nan immediately understood. You're saying that within this area, there are one or two large-scale domain fragments that will be affected by the collision of the ramming radiation zone. They will be thrown from a relatively deep location to a relatively safe area. They might be more suitable for remodeling? Rue Wen nodded. This was something that the radiation zone was capable of doing. Such a phenomenon seemed a little counterintuitive at first glance. The center of the contradiction or the storm should have a stronger impact, and the remaining debris should also be finer. But the problem was that the mist maze, which was a special environment caused by sunwheel hell, could not be simply regarded as the result of the collision and explosion. What was displayed in the broken structure was a mutual restriction, mutual influence, and mutual distortion mechanism. The next step forward was order. The next step after order was chaos. The present was only a temporary equilibrium. This sort of equilibrium mechanism formed a complex gravitational sphere. It was just like what commonly happened in the boundless universe. All things were destroyed and reconstructed, but they were no longer their original appearances. And this led to a direct result. The closer one got to the danger zone of the gravitational sphere, the more resources one could use. The chances of picking up scraps in the periphery were far, far too low. Luo Nan sighed and rubbed Rue Wen's scalp with force. So you know the danger. It can be used. Rue Wen didn't resist. She just emphasized this point once more. Since you said it, of course I believe you. It was rare for Rue Wen to say such accurate words. Luo Nan really didn't dare to refuse. He was afraid that this little girl would take things too hard and run into the radiation zone, to dig anew. It would be good to take advantage of this opportunity to let her slow down. Since it was decided, Luo Nan subconsciously began to draw up a plan in his mind. According to Rue Wen's demonstration of the transformation process, it would take around 3 months for 1 or 2 large-scale domain fragments to be thrown out. It could be said that time was ample, but it could also be said that he was nervous. First, he needed to conduct a step further of monitoring. He needed to gather more data and verify the trend of transformation that Rue Wen demonstrated. This fellow blood demon seemed to have a carefree and uninhibited appearance, but his mind was unexpectedly a bit dark. You're quite confident in Li Wei. Oh, I just hope that you can take things a step further before you go to Ha City. After all, the entire world knows that you're competing with Li Wei. You can't not understand the weight on the other side before you go to the boxing stage, right? Blood Demon spoke in a candid manner. We can be considered to be on the same side right now. I have to do a bit of a reminder. A reminder that Li Wei's energy is beyond imagination? Luo Nan grew more and more suspicious that Blood Demon's misunderstanding today was intentional. This fellow seemed to have been waiting for such an opportunity. Blood Demon chuckled. Speaking of energy, I've thought of another example. You should know that the situation here isn't too good. Yes, I know. Though Luo Nan resided in Xia City, he was constantly paying attention to Ha City, the center of the storm of the mutant infection outbreak. He was even secretly drawing portraits of the large quantities of mutant-infected people in the city, establishing a model for the step selection of Phase 2 infected people. Plus, he had gathered all sorts of news and intelligence reports. His understanding of Ha City was no less than anyone else's. You understand the situation of Phase 2 and Phase 3 as well? It's very troublesome. Luo Nan responded simply. He searched for 2 more keywords: riots. Lack of food. Yeah, lack of food. Blood Demon chuckled. In modern society, words like lack of food, or the more serious term famine, seem to be extremely far away. But in Ha City right now, these words went from pure concepts to gradually becoming reality. Due to the mutant infection being completely out of control, the number of infected people in Ha City increased explosively. There were also large amounts of highly dangerous people who were transforming from Phase 2 to Phase 3. The mutant process of these people was already irreversible. Their primordial genes had collapsed and mutated. They were rapidly transforming in the direction of mutant species. This transformation process was extremely fast, and it involved a mutation on the fleshly plane. It was necessary to absorb large amounts of squandered energy in a short period of time. Such an energy requirement was destined to be impossible to satisfy with 3 normal meals a day. Therefore, the infected in this stage would transform into the craziest of predators. Under the drive of chaotic and manic emotions, they would seize all resources that they could use. Things that could be edible and digestible were included. From ordinary food to other fleshly creatures including people. In a normal city, the appearance of 1 or 2 infected people like this could lead to a series of bloody cases. And in today's Ha City, there were far more than 1 or 200 or even 1 or 2,000 infected people. Chapter 11:19. This time Luo Nan just chuckled twice. Blood Demon gave him a few words of explanation. The deep blue world has a special mineral deposit that doesn't exist on Earth. The Apocalypse Laboratory calls it progenitor. Its specific properties aren't too clear, but it's said to be a half-energized marvel. It's extremely difficult to harvest. Some intelligence says that it's impossible to do with the current level of technology. Of course, it's hard to say whether or not Li Wei can succeed. Progenitor? Is it the type that the Deep Blue Walkers use as fuel for their backup energy system? Luo Nan had done in-depth research on the Deep Blue platform. He immediately flipped through the relevant information in his mind. That's progenitor with low purity. To be precise, it's just the impurities of or that have received the energy radiation of progenitor. It's formed through special purification techniques. It can barely be considered a companion ore. No, it really can't be considered a companion ore. The true companion ore is none other than the super-strong magnetic field that wraps the progenitor ore within the ghost stone. This is the origin of the superconducting revolution after World War III. The electrical signal that carried Blood Demon's explanation was transformed into sound waves that entered Luo Nan's ears. It stirred, causing him to let out an extremely faint sigh. The superconducting revolution. Tiske. Another pillar of the modern metropolis, the transportation and energy supply network that was like the blood vessels of the human body, as well as the countless basic materials and technical fields, were actually engraved with Li Wei's imprint from the very roots. Li Wei was truly a boss-type fellow. And this was just the part that he had shown to the people. Many people, including Blood Demon, should be able to guess that the core that supported this powerful power far surpassed the level that Earth's current civilization should be able to display. But so far, Luo Nan had not seen any particularly obvious or decisive evidence, be it from the mouth of the Blood Demon or from the information he had obtained from his own understanding. If given the chance, there would probably be quite a few people in the world who would grab Luo Nan by the collar and interrogate him. Where in the world did you copy that configuration and superconfiguration theory from? But Li Wei didn't seem to know where to start even if they were to interrogate him. In this regard he seemed to be a bit more low-key than Luo Nan. Frankly speaking, this was because of Li Wei's deep foundation on Earth. It was incomparable. This demon from beyond could not be viewed as a simple isolated individual. It was just like in an RPG game. Before seeing the final boss, one would have to struggle through endless levels for a while. Luo Nan thought for a few seconds. Then he thought about it and finally chuckled, "Okay, I get it. Thanks for telling me." They weren't pressed by the time of work or school. They spoke one after another, chatting as they ate. They were quite amused. Right now, the main topic at the dining table was Rue Wen. Mo Pring gulped down his breakfast in a few gulps and concentrated on gossiping. Last night, someone posted a practice video. Rue Wen didn't participate in the video, but what's the meaning of her repeatedly appearing in the camera? Rue Wen was talking about Rue Wen, but Mo Peng's eyes shot a glance at Mo Ya. Mingtang culture is simply leaking air from all sides. Even I wouldn't go to this extent. Is there an end to this hype? Rue Wen didn't respond at all. She just ate in small bites. She looked quiet and delicate, but it also seemed like she was tasting the fresh fragrance of each mouthful of porridge soup. It was unknown what these ordinary foods looked like in the end from the level of her perception. Luo Nan looked at Rue Wen for a long time. He subconsciously wanted to reach out and rub her head. At this time Mo Ya leisurely picked up a sesame pancake and tore it open. "Since you know it's hype, why are you still wasting time? Can't I pay attention to a beauty?" Mo Peng spoke boldly and confidently, but as a result, he was met with a cold glare from Mrs. Luo Shuqing. His momentum immediately fell to the ground and he laughed. "I just think you guys are going too far. There are already people in our class who are betting on whether or not Rue Wen will make her debut. I heard that there are people on the internet who are starting a fan club. If this goes on, it won't be easy to clean up the mess." Emoya was like Rue Wen. She ate the pancake in small bites. It was just that she was the one who made it. She ate the staple food like it was a snack. "It won't be easy to clean up the mess. It's convenient for you to earn money. You can have Rue Wen sign it and sell it outside." "No, absolutely not." Mo Peng received the unfathomable gazes of his parents at the same time. He nearly peed his pants in fright. He immediately raised his hand and cried out in injustice. "I used it myself. I just wanted to ride on the popularity and draw some attention online. I wanted to gain a few more fans." "Really?" Mrs. Luo Shuqing's expression remained unfriendly. Mo Haihang dismissed it with a laugh. His gaze turned to Mo Ya. "Your company has gone a bit overboard these past 2 days. At first, it could be said that they were protecting him, but now that we've seen the results, they're still unwilling to stop. Who knows what kind of trouble they'll cause in the future. If it's not convenient for you to tell me, I'll talk to them." Emoya shrugged. "What's so inconvenient about it? They've obviously been blinded by the heat these past 2 days." Speaking up to this point, Emoya asked, "The demonstration hasn't stopped until now. Does the government have any sincerity? Don't let those old matters cause problems in the end before the mutation infection is messed up." Mo Haihang shook his head. "It's not easy to go through the files." He played the same old trick, casually changing the topic. He looked at Luo Nan. "You're going out today?" Luo Nan grinned. "Yeah, I came back before dinner." They searched and they found this place. Luo Nan laughed and didn't mention it again. He looked at himself in the mirror and went downstairs. He asked Yinlu, "Is there anything else?" Indeed there were. Yinlu became more careful with her words. "The Foundation will send employees to various places and establish offices. Some cities need to submit information, especially the census plan. They can only proceed to the next step after the review. Luonan laughed. Ha City and She City are in such a mess. Do you want them? It just so happened that he was walking to the staircase on the first floor. When he heard the keywords Ha City and She City, everyone in the family, including Madame Luo Shuqing, looked over. They looked at Luonan's side, white on the inside and black on the outside. His clothes were concise and solemn. They were a bit stunned. Luonan waved his hand at them and quickly left through the living room. Their attitude is very firm. Yinlu replied in a low voice. The voices of support are very loud. This matter involved the operation of the Luonan and his friends' foundation, as well as the direction of the future global census. Luonan had already set the tone on this point. If they wanted to do a census, they would start with Ha City and She City, where the contradictions were the sharpest and the most chaotic. It seemed like the contradictions were sharp, but it was actually easier to fish in troubled waters. They could even blur the focus when necessary. But to do all this, they needed the full support of the city administrators. Of course, the most important ones were Apollon and Bat Guru. Putting the latter aside, no matter how difficult it was to deal with Apollon, he had the eye of the secret contract to mediate in the middle. There shouldn't be any major problems. But Luonan had communicated with Blood Demon last time. He had to pay attention to the subtle relationship between Apollon, the Apocalypse Laboratory, and Li Wei. But before Luonan could pay attention, a demonic moth appeared on the other side. The census plan and a series of information could be coarse or fine. The audit could be lenient or strict. This was a common method used by the administration to control people. They didn't need to control people. They could grasp the progress through the plan and understand the substantial progress of the global census. If Ha City and She City were like this, then the 86 cities would follow suit. The foundation wouldn't need to do any work in the future. Luonan wasn't angry when he encountered this matter. From his perspective, it was much better for Ha City to send a demonic moth this early than for the foundation to toss and turn after it had fully started its work. On the contrary, it had the effect of a warning. Besides, who would really count on the foundation to do a census? If the spearhead were to be pointed over there, it could be considered as helping to cover up. She didn't need to worry about the follow-up. But this didn't mean that Yin Li's matter was over. She used this opportunity to report to the Blood Flame Order. She followed Luonan's instructions to simulate the progress of the Hellfire Tyrant. Luonan actually had a deeper understanding of this than Yinlu. Yinlu just used this as a primer to lead to another matter. Recently, the madam has been studying the simulation while she's been in closed-door training. She has some insights and wants to share them with you? Huh? Luonan raised his eyebrows. Yinlu, who was tens of thousands of kilometers away, couldn't follow up with this one sound. This made Luonan understand that Yinlu knew that her words were taboo. Ultimately, the connection between Luonan and Madame Halder was deeper than Yin Li's. It was just like how Luonan's understanding of the structure of the Blood Soul Temple in the Abyss District was deeper than everyone in the Blood Flame Order put together. She didn't use the direct route but instead used Yinlu to deliver the message. She deliberately drifted around. What was she planning? Luonan didn't quite understand. He didn't understand and Yinlu didn't understand either. She only had some guesses. And the more she guessed, the more guilty she felt. So she became more and more cautious around Luonan. Most of the things she said before were probably because she sensed Luonan's mood. She was afraid that she would bump into the muzzle of a gun. Luonan really didn't care about these little thoughts. She was actually willing to speak up for her old master. This courage was quite commendable. Was there a difference between the old and the new? Luonan felt a bit amused by his own subtle thoughts. He was already walking on the street right now, far away from the residential community. It was a weekend morning, and the flow of people was much less than usual. The streets were empty but he felt the sea breeze, slowly dispelling the dry air of early summer. Continue speaking. Yinli's voice grew weaker and weaker. Sir, the madam's meaning is that you just so happen to be going to Spring City? Yes, Spring City. Luonan turned his head and looked at the silhouette of the rising sun behind the scale-like clouds behind the tall buildings. He slightly narrowed his eyes and waited for the sun to shift in the clouds. The brightness and obscurity changed. Finally, rays of light filled the void and streaked through the gaps between the buildings. They shone on his body, and his skeleton suddenly turned transparent. He disappeared without a trace in the blind spots of pedestrians and surveillance cameras. But in the next second, all the electrical equipment in the surrounding 100-meter diameter area suddenly short-circuited. The streets soon turned into a chaotic mess. Luonan felt a bit of what he had created, but he had no way to do it for the time being. He lifted his hand and moved his fleshly body. Chapter 11:21. Luo Nan hung up, and his gaze shifted from the sun to the vast and sparse cloud layer. He continued to ponder. How did it deviate? It was quite far off. The distance between him and his destination was nearly 300 kilometers. Right now he was a bit closer to the satellite city outside of Spring City. Though Luo Nan had intentionally made adjustments to avoid the impact of crossing space and directly colliding with the laboratory ruins, the error was so large that he had no choice but to ponder over it. In his field of vision, the appearance of the sun or the clouds was different from that of an ordinary person. It could be said that it had already broken the scope of common sense that had been transmitted in an orderly fashion over several thousand years of civilization. It had merged into the extremely complex structure of space and time. At this time, the magnetic optical mica was extending its enormous body that seemed to be broken in parts. It roughly enveloped the surface area of the planet, which was over 500 million square kilometers. It was still not satisfied with this. It borrowed the special nature of the Earth's magnetic field to merge its own magnetism into the planet's crust, mantle, and crust. It intersected with the different rotational speeds of the different layers of regions. It felt or attempted to play with the spatial magnetic field of this planet, and it fused with the surrounding distorted structure of space and time. At the same time, it closely followed the impact of the solar wind on the Earth's magnetic field. It mixed with the stream of rays and particles ejected from the polar regions. It naturally changed its nature and flowed deeper into the universe's space. It looked wanton and random, completely disregarding the integrity of its form. Or perhaps, as long as the subtle and profound magnetic structure existed, no matter how it tore and deformed, its essence was still one. As for whether or not its creator and controller could keep up, that was another matter. Of course, the magnetic optical mica had a reserved instinct in its endless process of expansion. Within the range of influence of its magnetic field, the magnetic optical mica used its special perspective to observe everything that existed in this area. It attempted to dismantle and piece them together into a more suitable structure. From Luo Nan's perspective, this could be considered a kind of aesthetic. Well, if he followed the magnetic optical mica's aesthetic taste, the world had a population of over 10 billion people. There were animals, plants, microorganisms, mutants, and other non-living existences that were trillions and trillions of times more numerous than humans. This included water, soil, minerals, and other non-living existences. It could be done slowly or it could be done in an instant after accumulating enough energy. Every time Luo Nan touched the magnetic optical mica, he would feel a sense of accomplishment, as if he had saved the world. Fortunately, he managed to control this terrifying nature that humans could not understand, and did not let this being that he had created with the potential of a great monarch completely distort all life on Earth and even the space and time of its existence. The question was, who made this thing? No matter what, it was now under control. At the very least, there were no signs of it starting. Now that he thought about it, the magnetite mica he had encountered at the relay station was extremely powerful and had single-handedly suppressed the Heavenly Yuan Empire's army. However, if one were to look into it carefully, it was probably also restricted by the poisonous environment. Its range of influence was greatly reduced, and it only occupied a single planet. The distortion of space-time environment was also not strong enough. As for the one on Earth, it was still controlled, wasn't it? Luo Nan's mind raced a few times before he found the root of the problem. The problem lay in the restrictions. It was precisely because of his restrictions that the magnetic optical mica was unable to completely mold the space-time environment according to its aesthetic standards. There were certain rules and differences between the space-time of Earth and Earth. When Luo Nan came over, he relied on the cloud energy phantom of the magnetic optical mica that covered the entire world to realize the teleportation and shuttle. He followed the laws of the magnetic optical mica, and this formed a certain deviation from the true environment of Earth's spacetime. Luo Nan's recent experiments had all been conducted in the vicinity of Xia City. Even if there was a deviation, it wouldn't be too obvious. The only time he had done a long-distance teleportation, he had anchored the remains of the horned demon. It didn't have any value as a reference. Sure enough, there was no such thing as a perfect success in the first experiment. It was easy to improve after knowing the problem. Luo Nan already had a plan in mind. If he wanted to borrow the magnetic optical mica's fast tunnel and eliminate the error inside, he would either have to release the nature of the magnetic optical mica and let the Earth's spacetime it covered distort into the way it wished to. Or he would have to perform a correction calculation between the magnetic optical mica and the local spacetime. This could be solved with a configuration design. Luonan obviously chose the latter. Even if he had to expend a bit more mental energy, it would save him 100 times more energy than when he used the Luo clan sandwich domain to forcefully break through the barrier between the two worlds and realize the teleportation leap. Then again, sometimes the stupidest method was the most correct method. Chapter 11:23. Wu Zuanliang went, "Oh, it's that young fellow who came from the same orphanage as Qingwen. He should be 50 years old this year. Back then he almost became my graduate student. In the end, he became Qingwen's follower and went to the wilderness." "You're young. You probably don't have an impression." "No, I have a very good impression. After all, it was a rarely seen dimensional crossbow that utilized the laws of the polar domain. It nearly took my life." Of course, Luonan just revealed a smile at this time. He seems to have been operating a business in the wilderness these past few years. He's doing quite well. He also has a stake in Dr. Wang's company. Wu Zuanliang was rather emotional. "It's not easy." "Really?" Luonan's gaze followed Wu Zuanliang's description and he saw Dr. Wang's expression turn a bit odd. Dr. Wang just nodded his head over and over. From the perspective of a city dweller, the meaning behind operating a business in the wilderness and doing well was quite subtle. Wu Zuanliang was quite natural. "We originally agreed to go together, but he had something to do at the last minute, so he introduced Dr. Wang. Has he been in contact with you guys these past few years?" "No. I heard my aunt mention that the two of them communicated when Dad was here, but their relationship didn't seem to be too good." Half of Luonan's words were fabricated. He had indeed heard the main contents of the story from Mrs. Luo Shuqing once. Of course, Mrs. Luo Shuqing had only mentioned a fellow with the surname Luo at the time. Due to a certain suggestion from her father, the project succeeded. The fellow called her father in his excitement and cursed him, calling him a deserter, a piece of trash and so on. Luonan had some suspicions about who it was, but he didn't know for sure. But from the contents relayed by his aunt, it should be someone active in the wilderness, someone who once worked together with his father. Luonan highly suspected that this Luo was actually Luo, but he didn't have any clear evidence. But they were chatting right now. They needed to gather information and expand in depth. They needed a starting point. Professor Wu Zuanliang laughed and sighed when he heard this. The matters of young people. Of course he's not young anymore. He changed the topic at this point. "Little Nan, you're in your prime. I heard you talk about this sister and that sister. You seem to know quite a few. You seem to be quite likable?" "Ha. Yeah, everyone knows about Boss Luo's hobbies." Tang Yi added with a smile. Realization dawned on Wu Zuanliang. "I remember now. Old Pan did mention this before." In the end, Luonan had seen many shameless people during this period of time. He had many references when imitating them. Luonan just revealed an awkward yet polite smile. Then he quickly changed topics. "You know, my situation here is special. Uncle and Aunt don't talk to me about what happened in the past. It's impossible to ask Grandpa, old Luo. I haven't seen him for a few years. The older I get, the more I can't stand it." "How is he?" Luonan responded in a reserved manner. "It can't be any worse." Professor Wu Zuanliang sighed yet again. His heart was filled with feelings of pity for this little fellow, Luonan. He strove to recall more and more, displaying his specialty in nagging to start a long chat mode. He still felt that this was not enough. He even took the initiative to start a video call with Professor Panwen. First, he dragged Luonan over to appear on camera together. He showed off today's wondrous travel experience. As expected, he stirred up the emotions of Professor Panwen. Then he dragged his wife over to talk about the past. That's where the convoy is. They quickly advanced toward the laboratory ruins in this atmosphere. Lieutenant Colonel Chen, whose mind was filled with past events, was roughly a dozen kilometers away. He was worried about whether or not he would encounter additional risks due to knowing too much. At the same time, he dutifully informed Luonan, "There's around 5 minutes left. Are we almost there? The limited field of view of the armored vehicle clearly couldn't satisfy Wu Zunliang's requirements. He simply stood up and looked through the windshield in front of him. Just stop for a bit. Professor Pan felt quite helpless towards his wife's temperament. The two of them were both loud and clear. They had a few conflicts when they were talking about the past. It was inevitable that they would get a bit tired after yelling at each other from several thousand kilometers away. He took this opportunity to take the initiative to call a truce. We're almost there. We need to take care of things. What's the point of being so anxious and pale? Luonan. Professor Pan. I've heard quite a bit of news about you these past 2 days. Let's not talk about anything else. Since you've already made a name for yourself, you need to put on an act. Let your mother's soul in heaven be at ease. Let my shop shine. Oh my, what are you saying these pretentious words for? Wu Zunliang pointed at the projection area in annoyance. Luonan chuckled and responded with drooping eyes, as you wish. Professor Pan seemed to laugh and sigh. He simply cut off the video. Wu Zunliang was still mumbling, I'm afraid I've seen too much in the past 2 years. I didn't realize it before. No one dared to respond. At this time, it was the turn of the others to take the initiative to change the topic. Tang Yi estimated the distance and turned to Dr. Wang. I remember you saying before you came that senior sister Qingwen didn't stay in this laboratory for long. Yeah. From what I remember, Dr. Bu stayed in the 100 Races laboratory for around half a year. She was mainly in the Highland Frontier laboratory before. She might not come down even once in a year or two. The main reason she came down this time was to Since he was stumped by the question just now, he did his best to change the topic to a direction he was good at while acting as a tour guide. The vast majority of our group of people participate in the distributed gene project. We differentiate and separate mutant genes, determine their growing environment, and think of ways to make them live together. It's similar to mulling over a microscopic ecosphere. According to Dean Luo's words, structure is the most important thing. Whether it's the structure of the ecological food chain or the structure of the physical bearing space environment. Dr. Wang's words became more and more fluent when he spoke of familiar technical fields. Back in the laboratory, we were mainly in charge of the design of the food chain. Little Wu was mainly in charge of designing an idealized coexistence environment. Both sides worked hard together to ensure that they were able to complete a cyclic dynamic gene competition map in a continuous spacetime environment. They used this to compare the nature and evolutionary trends of the various mutant genes that appeared in the wilderness. They wanted to see which ones were stronger and which ones were weaker. They wanted to see whether or not they were in line with the actual environment of the mutant species in the wilderness. On the other hand, they wanted to find an ideal genetic coding sequence. Those who dabble in biology are basically pursuing these things. Wu Zunliang gave a brief evaluation. Then he looked pensive. I've seen your thesis online. Indeed, a considerable portion of it is in the field of gene competition. Even though it's been over a decade, it's still quite insightful looking at it now. Dr. Wang could only say, I'm ashamed. At this time he was already unable to stop himself. He continued to speak emotionally. For the sake of enriching the gene pool, we've really had many dealings with mutants over the years. All kinds of experiments, especially the genetic samples of some powerful mutants. The laboratory has no way of collecting them. It's especially troublesome to go through official channels. We can only entrust it to the wilderness hunters and tribes. We have to spend large sums of money every year. There were several times when I thought that the laboratory wouldn't be able to support itself, but in the end, we didn't fall because of money. Instead, we fell because of other messy matters. Wu Zunliang sighed. He wanted to say a few more words, but it was dull and tasteless. The group had already walked over 200 meters in by now. Lieutenant Colonel Qin dutifully informed them, there's a collapsed area up ahead. For the sake of safety, it's better to maintain a certain distance. Dr. Wang also agreed, the structure of the collapsed area is unstable. Oh, actually, that area used to be one of the safe areas of the laboratory. It was Dr. Bu's time. It suffered an impact and became relatively weak. It collapsed the most severely during the earthquake. Luo Nan turned to look at him. Is it there? Actually, it's a bit to the side. Dr. Wang did his best to organize his words. In the year 80, the laboratory had already been captured. Everyone was hiding in a safe house. In the end, they were threatened by those people outside with explosions. It seems that there were mutants that could travel through the soil and so on. It was a complete mess. The collapsed area was the area that suffered the heaviest damage back then. Everyone was in a state of panic for the next few years. Their finances were strained, so they never had time to repair it. Dr. Wang didn't describe the situation back then clearly, aside from becoming long-winded due to his nervousness. He didn't even know as much as Luo Nan did from the data. However, it was this lively mood that drew in a feeling of immersion that was hard to embody with the cold numbers in the manuscript. Luo Nan's gaze stopped on Dr. Wang's face. Perhaps it was because of his gaze that Dr. Wang was unable to continue. It's probably because of this reason. Luo Nan pursed his lips slightly. Dr. Wang, you know that I don't really care about why this place has become like this. If it was possible, I would like to hear more about the matters concerning my mother. It's like this. Dr. Bo really lived in seclusion back then. The laboratory's environment wasn't too suitable for pregnant women, so we didn't see her often. In fact, if it wasn't for the accident, I heard that Dr. Bo would have been transferred to Spring City to have a miscarriage. Why didn't she go earlier to have a miscarriage? Why did the accident happen? This. Dr. Wang was stumped. A low and hoarse voice rang out in front of the group of people during this awkward moment. It overflowed the security personnel's warning line and was clearly transmitted. Why are there so many whys? If you really want to find a reason, it's nothing more than the terrible curiosity of your Luo family. It brought out bad luck, trouble, and calamity. It infected her and destroyed her. That's all. The security personnel on the warning line and their equipped exoskeletons, including the 4 deep blue walkers, only responded with an alarm after the voice rang out. The 3 armored vehicles that were lagging behind started up accordingly and came whistling over. However, the person who caused all of this did not make any further moves. Earlier, he had walked up from the entrance of the collapsed area as if he was walking up a staircase. He stood at the edge of the area wearing the lab coat that was not buttoned up. The corner of his coat was swaying along with the hot and dry air of the wilderness. At first glance, it looked like the staff who stayed behind to welcome the arrival of the guests. Wu Zhuanliang was immediately blocked by Captain Cho, but the old man's eyes were very sharp, and he had already recognized the identity of the figure. Luo Yuan. Chapter 1125. An unexpected character had appeared so openly in front of the warning line. Moreover, the alarm had only sounded after the other party had spoken. This was undoubtedly a humiliating failure for Captain Cho and the other security personnel. But Captain Cho didn't have the leisure to taste humiliation. He immediately made adjustments. Through the dynamo core implanted in his body, he commanded the security personnel at the front of the warning line to adjust their formation. He formed a link with the other 4 deep blue walkers in the formation to construct a formatted space, together. It was also at this moment that Captain Chow's body, which was originally like an ordinary person's, began to bulge. The fine bone fiber structure flipped out of his muscles and soon formed a dense layer, forming a complicated and regular arrangement. There was also a dark blue reflection on the edge as if it was a fish-scale armor made of steel. In reality, the inner layer of this armor did indeed have a large amount of traces of special strengthening. It was absolutely not the result of a simple mutation. Clearly, while Captain Cho was undergoing treatment in isolation, whether it was out of his own will or not, he had indeed received a considerable degree of research and modification, so much so that he could perform some kind of active mutation and achieve a deep integration with the Deep Blue platform. Captain Cho, can you assist our Foundation in doing some research later? Captain Chow's expression was mostly hidden under this scale armor. Moreover, he was facing straight ahead. No changes could be seen. On the other side, Lieutenant Colonel Chen couldn't help but turn his head. He just happened to see Luo Nan, who had been supporting Wu Zhuanliang as a polite junior. Luo Nan withdrew his hand and went straight ahead. There was even a bit of a smile on his face as he passed by Captain Cho. He gave the former a slight nod. Perhaps it was an illusion. But in any case, from Lieutenant Colonel Chen's point of view, Luo Nan wasn't the least bit surprised by this unexpected situation. Moreover, Captain Cho and Lieutenant Colonel Chen didn't have the right to stop him if he wanted to go forward. Only Wu Zhuanliang sensed that the atmosphere wasn't right. He raised his voice and shouted, Luo Nan. It was also at this moment that the two names that came out of his mouth looked at each other across the warning line. Compared to Luo Yuan's preemptive show of strength, Luo Nan's observation was more meticulous. Or perhaps it could be said that he was a bit more brazen. He sized up the person in front of him from head to toe, especially the person's obviously old clothes. Several seconds later, Luo Nan spoke with an admiring tone. It's really amazing to be able to find clothes to cover your body in this environment. Luo Yuan's gaze never left Luo Nan. Chapter 11:26. Luo Yuan straightforwardly agreed to Luo Nan's request. It was so straightforward that Luo Nan suspected that Luo Yuan had come for this very reason. In comparison, persuading Professor Wu Zhuanliang to obediently stay outside the collapsed area took a bit more effort. The old professor wasn't stupid. Of course he could see the high tension between Luo Nan and Luo Yuan. He was afraid that the two would go down and start a fight causing trouble. Luo Yuan wanted to go down the well. Lieutenant Colonel Chen and Captain Cho tried to persuade him. In the end, Luo Nan walked back and comforted him. Professor, don't worry. I won't do anything today. Tang Yi rolled her eyes at Luo Nan. She turned her head and said with a smile, Teacher, don't worry about this. When immortals fight, mortals suffer. If this continues, the ones who will collapse will be Lieutenant Colonel Chen and the others. Wu Zhuanliang glared at her. Immortals my ass. What's so great about being an ability user? It's not like I haven't seen it before. Tang Yi's smile didn't change. In any case, once this membrane was pierced, some things would be easier to talk about. Wu Zhuanliang nodded at Luo Nan. He raised his voice and shouted at Luo Yuan, You guys have great abilities. I can't control you guys. It's fine if you don't let me go down, but give me a view sharing. You guys need to remember that I also came with a mission from my family. Okay, we'll do as you say. Luo Nan was the first to agree. Luo Yuan also bowed, tacitly agreeing. Luo Yuan's method of coming over was too rough. He didn't have any electronic equipment on him, so the view sharing was left to Luo Nan. The hexa-ear he wore was very good at doing this. After activating the function, Wu Zhuanliang didn't continue to nag. He just simply said through the sharing function, Be careful. Luo Nan smiled at Wu Zhuanliang. He and Luo Yuan directly sank into the depths of the collapsed hole. As they quickly descended, the sunlight that shone in from the entrance of the cave also weakened rapidly. Soon, only a distorted and swaying shadow silhouette was left in the human's natural vision. The breathing that Wu Zhuanliang shared with him was clearly much heavier. For an old man who did not possess supernatural abilities, the experience of rapidly descending in a dark environment without any tools was still a little too stimulating. However, Wu Zhuanliang didn't know that what he was able to share with Luo Nan was merely an insignificant small portion of Luo Nan's entire level of perception. Even if it was a simulation carried out by an intelligent instrument with night vision capabilities, it wouldn't be able to display even a fraction of Luo Nan's perception. Whether it was Luo Nan or Luo Yuan, they wouldn't rely purely on their natural vision to capture and process information in this complex dark environment. At this moment, the range, the frequency, and the way they interfered with the material plane represented the breadth, depth, and precision of their senses. Their respective senses would clash and interfere with each other, especially when there was Luo Nan, a perception freak that covered the entire region. The two of them didn't say anything, but their contact and probing on the level of perception never stopped. Luo Yuan's senses Luo Yuan. Luo Yuan's Luo Nan Luo Yuan's Luo Nan Luo I Luo and Luo Yuan's Nan. Nan. Luo Yuan Nan. But Luo Yuan Nan. Nan. Luo Yuan's Luo Yuan had long ago Luo Nan didn't do this on purpose. He spent most of his energy observing the external environment. He observed the special area where his mother lived and eventually died. However, Luo Yuan's power circulation pattern was too unique. The parasitic clone before his eyes didn't count for anything. It was connected to Luo Yuan. It was in existence like a relay satellite that was outside of the local spacetime environment. It was constantly moving in the dark side of spacetime. It was far too eye-catching. Its mode of existence and position were very vague. It was separated from the local spacetime by the fragmented isolation belt and the deep and distant polar domain. It was its natural cover. But Luo Nan could see it. He could see it more clearly than last year when he was hit by the dimensional crossbow. This was without a doubt the problem Luo Nan had pointed out through the mouth of the Horned Demon back in Format 70 Laboratory. The most valuable thing Luo Yuan, a former laboratory member, obtained in the Misty Labyrinth was very likely a large fragment. It was hidden in the depths of the endless Misty Labyrinth like a sandstorm. It followed Luo Yuan's will and maintained a close yet distant connection with the local spacetime of Earth. What Luo Nan was able to see was basically this. There didn't seem to be any substantial breakthroughs compared to before. But the most important thing was the details. Conclusive details. I can't calculate the spatial structure distribution of the distorted fragment from 2 points and 1 line right now. But if I have a few more examples. 10. Maybe even fewer. The premise is that the trajectory isn't too complicated. Luo Nan felt that Luo Yuan would regret it in the future. Or it could be said that he would help Luo Yuan regret. Luo Yuan regretted carelessly exposing the connection between the parasitic clone and the plane of existence before him. The problem was, how did Luo Yuan know what level Luo Nan's current sensing mode was at? Even Luo Nan himself was still working hard to adapt. He was adapting to this wide area sensing mode based on the magnetic mica. Ever since he successfully cultivated the first magnetic light on the jadeite light and planted the true seed, the true meaning of the magnetic mica began to grow without interruption. Nearly a month's time was enough for the larval form of the magnetic mica to expand once more. This wasn't just a simple expansion into outer space. It also included the local spacetime environment of Earth and the continuous infiltration of all neighboring planes. The situation in the deep blue world was a bit special. There was no obvious progress for the time being. But in the cloud world and even in the extremely broken environment of the Misty Labyrinth, the magnetic mica's sensitivity and activity continued to increase. Currently, the only thing that limited Luo Nan's perceptual ability was the structure of his brain. Luo Nan was immortal in the end. His brain was wet inside his skull, and it wasn't like a multi-core supercomputer. It was impossible for him to casually absorb the incalculable flow of information on the level of a trillion at all times. There were even more chaotic and even unstructured data fragments. So he used the magnetic mica's sensing nature to synthesize distance, danger, focus, and many other conditions to comb and build a new sensing network. The magnetic mica's material foundation was already infinitely close to the microscopic level, and the carrier structure was hard to grasp. Luo Nan's overall ability to observe information on the macroscopic level had yet to recover to the peak state of the water vapor cloak. But the coverage of his sensing domain, his grasp of key information, his sensitivity to danger, and even the efficiency of his instantaneous interference were far greater than before. There was no need to even mention his future potential. Time is on my side. Luo Nan lowered his head, temporarily burying his killing intent against Luo Yuan. This wasn't forbearance. This was planning. His thoughts had completely returned to the plane of reality, but it was unavoidable for him to link up with the past. There was frequent interference on the sensing plane. Ever since they entered the collapsed hole, the two hadn't spoken to each other. From this point of view, Luo Yuan couldn't be considered a qualified commentator, but Luo Nan didn't mind. The longer he stayed in this dark space, the more information his multidimensional perception could absorb and reorganize. Especially in a situation where Luo Yuan had already pointed out the direction. Luo Nan's tentacles of perception touched the target and the space that held the target a step earlier than his body. Frankly speaking, that place wasn't quite the same as what Luo Nan had imagined. In any case, Luo Nan and Luo Yuan continued to tread on mycelium, moss, stagnant water, and the bones of small animals as they headed in that direction. They passed through collapsed or half-collapsed passageways, as well as empty and dilapidated doorways. Luo Nan asked subconsciously, but he didn't expect Luo Yuan to answer. But Luo Yuan still spoke a few seconds later. Last words. Qing Wen's last words. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.